Do you need a passport soon? Like in the next 2 weeks soon? You have two options for how you can get it. Option one is the DIY route. You can make an appointment and visit a regional passport agency. There's only 26 scattered across the entire United States, so depending on where you live, this may be easy or it may be a challenge. Your second option is to hire a registered passport expediter to go on your behalf. You give them all your materials, they make the appointment, they go to the regional agency, they bring you back your passport, or they ship it directly to you overnight. In this day and age, people are worried about costs. Trust me, as a father, as somebody with bills to pay, I am too. Most people will assume the DIY route, taking care of it all yourself, is going to be the cheapest way to get it done. However, that may not be the case, depending on where you live, how much time you have, and how much travel is going to cost you to get to that appointment. There are definitely cases where hiring a passport expediter can save you money, not to mention the time and the stress. Today, I'm going to walk you through a couple different scenarios to help you figure out which option's better for you. Go the DIY route, make and attend the appointment on your own, or hire an expediter to go on your behalf, saving you some time and making your life a little bit easier. Let's say you live in Houston, Texas. That's great. There's a regional agency in Houston, Texas. If you can get an appointment, you can probably get in sometime within the next week and get that appointment and get that passport at a minimal cost and at a minimal expense of your time. However, appointments aren't always easy to come by. So let's play this out. What if you live in Houston, but the next available appointment, or at least one that's soon enough for you and your urgent travel needs, is in Dallas? Dallas is about 240 miles away from Houston. That leaves you with two choices. You can drive there, or you can get a ticket and fly there. Let's play this out and see how the costs pan out. Okay, so let's say you're driving to Dallas from Houston. It's about 480 miles round trip. You're going to need some gas. Estimating about 30 miles per gallon, it's going to be about $100 to get you there and back. Then you need to account for things like tolls and parking. Let's estimate about $30 for that. Then we're going to take into account you're going to need to eat. Probably going to need something to drink, maybe some coffee along the way. Let's pencil that in for another $40. You're going to have those passport fees. Now, this doesn't change no matter what path you take. You're going to have to be paying that. That's what it costs to get a new passport book and pay the expediting and processing fees. And finally, you need to think about the fact you're going to be missing some work. Now, if you have paid time off, great. Do you really want to use it for this? That's entirely up to you. Do you want to pretend to be sick? Not the most ethical way to go, but it's up to you. Or if you are paid hourly or you don't have that kind of time off, you got to account for the fact that you're going to be missing out on that revenue and that income. So let's pencil that in at $200 to $300. So all told, you're looking at about $570 to $670 to travel from Houston to Dallas to visit a regional passport agency and get an urgent passport on your own. That's a reasonable expense to try to get an urgent passport, but you're going to be spending most of the day on the road. You're probably going to have to take a day or two off from work, and you're assuming you're going to be able to get that passport issued the same day. But what if you fly instead? Unsurprisingly, this is probably going to end up costing more. The first reason, you're getting a flight. So you're looking between $300 to $450 for a round trip from Houston to Dallas at current rates. The next thing you need to consider is how are you getting to and from the airport? You can either drive yourself, pay airport parking rates, and then depend on a rideshare or a cab or public transportation once you land, or you could go the rideshare route both ways. Either way, let's just estimate about $50. Again, you got to eat, you got to drink, so let's write in about $40 for the day. Then there's those passport fees. They're not changing. That $210 you're going to spend no matter what. And then again, you're going to potentially miss some work. While the only major change here is a flight instead of paying for gas and wear and tear on your car, it does take the price up a lot. You're looking at between $800 to $1,050 for the day by these estimates. Again, your mileage may vary depending on the flights you can catch. Maybe you have some miles stored up. Maybe you have some discounts for rideshare. But again, this is a very expensive way to spend your day. Whether you choose to drive or fly, there are some things you need to be worried about that could make things even trickier and costlier. Here's the other thing you need to consider. There's a chance you might not get your passport issued the exact same day you apply at a regional agency. Technically, it can take up to 8 business days. Most people get their passport issued the same day. But a lot of times, if you have a late appointment, you run the risk that you might have to come back the next day or 2 days later to pick up your passport. If you're far away from home, you need to account for that in your budgeting. A hotel is going to run you about $120 to $180 a night in the Dallas area. If you decide to drive instead, you got a budget for another $100 round trip. Got to pay for that gas. Account for extra meals. It's going to be about $50 a day you want to tack on. And again, additional days off from work. If you're not getting paid for those, you got to budget for another $200, $300 a day or whatever your going rate is. By these estimates, whether you drive or fly, you're going to be tacking on another $350 to $500 per day you have to wait. And again, there's no way to know whether you're going to have to until you actually attend your appointment. There are no guarantees. So if your passport isn't issued on the day that you arrive at your appointment, you're going to have to add another $350 to $500 onto your expenses. If it takes another day after that, 3 days could run you $350 to $950 plus, depending on where you stay, how much you need to eat, and how long you have to wait. Again, there are no guarantees. There's a good chance you're going to get your passport the same day that you apply. You may have to come back after several hours to give them time to print, but depending on when your appointment is or how busy the agency is, you might have to come back the next day or even 2 days later, maximum of 8 days. But again, no guarantees. They're not going to be able to tell you that before you show up to your appointment. You have to budget for the worst case scenario. These extra days add up. Your total cost range could skyrocket up to for anywhere from that original $570 figure to over $2,000 just to visit a regional passport agency on your own. So now let's look at a situation that's a lot trickier. And depending on where you live, this may be more relatable to you and your circumstances. Like I said, there's only 26 regional passport agencies across the entire United States. Most of them are located on the coasts and near major urban centers. If you live in a more rural area or closer to the center of the country, you're going to have a harder time finding a regional agency that's really close to where you are. So let's play out another scenario. You live in Boise, Idaho. There are no regional agencies in Idaho at all. The closest one is actually in Seattle, Washington. That's over 500 miles away. So unless you're up for a road trip, you're probably flying. Let's take a look at these costs, should you decide that you're going to go to a regional agency on your own. The game changes a lot when you can't drive yourself. Sure, you could do a Boise to Seattle road trip, but odds are you're probably going to fly. Current rates, that's about $400 to $600 round trip. You're going to need a way to get around. So whether that's a ride share or a rental car, budget about $100 to get you where you need to go throughout your stay. A hotel is going to run you $250 to $400 a night. The likelihood of you catching a flight, getting into Seattle the very day you have your appointment in time, and being able to hop back on that flight and get home the same day are really slim. You're going to want to budget for that hotel cost. And because you're probably going to be there for 24 hours, you want to budget a little bit more for food. $100 is probably fair. There are those passport fees. They're not changing. $210 out the window. Throw in $200 to $600 of missed work time, depending on how many days you miss. You're looking at a DIY total of about $1,200 to over $2,000 just to get your passport if you have to travel about that distance from Boise to Seattle to get to a regional agency. And again, there's no guarantee how fast you're going to get that passport issued after you apply. Same day is a possibility. You might have to wait a day or two, or you might have to wait a day or two to be able to catch a return flight back home. For many travelers, that's probably just not practical. Think about the fact that you're spending that kind of money just to get your passport. This isn't even the international trip, which itself is probably pretty expensive. So now that we've looked at these three scenarios, let's take a look at what the costs are associated with getting a passport expediter to make and attend a regional passport agency appointment on your behalf. A passport expediting service is going to cut out a ton of these costs for you. Particularly if you're somebody who's living far away from a regional agency, you have to really give this some thought. A reasonable price charged by a passport expediter for around a 1 week turnaround between when you apply and when your passport is back in your hand is about $399, $400. You're going to also have to pay for overnight shipping to and from the expediter. So you can budget about $75 based on what FedEx is currently charging. And again, you have to pay the passport fees. The expediter doesn't pay them on your behalf. They just bring your payment to the appointment for you. But here's the kicker. There's no gas, no tolls, no travel expenses. There are no flights you have to try to book. You don't have to worry about spending money on meals on the road. No hotels to stay in. No time off from work. You get to use your time how you see fit. Spend time with your family. Enjoy your hobbies. Go to work. You don't have to do anything other than make sure the passport expediter has the information, your application, and the payment. They take care of the rest for you. They make the appointment. They go. and then make sure that when the passport is finally issued, it comes back to you via FedEx overnight. So adding all this up, you can get an expediter to go on your behalf, add in all those additional costs, and it's only about $685. That's still a lot, but if you have an urgent passport need, it may be your cheapest option. So let's be real here. Following this route, you stay home, you don't have to take a day off from work or pretend you're sick, and you don't have to do any of the travel or legwork yourself. Not only that, it may actually be cheaper to have that convenience than actually doing it all on your own. Let's be honest, these probably aren't your exact circumstances. However, we've made a worksheet on US Passport Service Guide to help you figure out what your costs would be so you can do the comparison of the DIY route versus having an expediter go on your behalf. Let's do a quick cost comparison here. These are the 4 scenarios we've talked about. If you live close enough to a regional agency, you might be able to go the DIY route and come up with something that's cheaper. By our estimates, we were able to get under $600 with the driving from Houston to Dallas scenario. But again, depending on how long it takes for the passport to be issued, that ballooned up to over $1,000, depending on how many days you had to wait and additional expenses you might have to account for. Flying obviously takes the price up even more, between $800 to $2,000, again, depending on how many days you have to put into this and how much it costs you to do so. And then finally, if you have no choice but a long trip to get from where you are to a regional agency, the costs can be astronomical. You're looking at over $1,000 to over $2,000 just to get your passport. And that's just for one person. In these cases, using a passport expediter actually is going to save you money along with the time and the stress. Not only that, we have a directory based on over 20 years of experience helping viewers and readers like you with their travel document needs. We help them figure out what are the top expediters that you can count on to go on your behalf and handle your sensitive information so you can get a passport quickly. Check out the links in the description below for all of these. So let's break it down. If you live close to a regional passport agency, odds are the DIY route, there's a way you can make that cost effective for you. If you have the time to spend and the willingness to actually go on your own behalf, that may be the most cost-effective plan for you. However, the farther away you get from those agencies, the higher the costs go, because now you're adding travel to be able to get the document you need to then travel internationally. You're compounding how much you have to pay just because those appointments are so far away from where you actually are. Not only that, there's a chance the closest appointment may not be even in your state. Many of the top passport expediting services have offices in multiple locations near different regional agencies, so they can get your passport to where the best odds are to get your document returned to you as fast as humanly possible, and you can be on your way. So again, be sure to check out US Passport Service Guide for that worksheet so you can calculate the costs on your own, as well as our directory of the top passport expediting services so you can compare costs with live, up-to-date information and make the best choice for you, your family, and your travel needs. I hope this helps save you some time, some stress, and some money. Let us know in the comments what choice you decide to make, and safe travels.